Right. Hey guys, let's talk. So today is January the 26th, which means it's Australia Day. And throughout the country, every year, we celebrate this day and we all celebrate what it means to be Australian. Today, even though there has been a lot of celebration, there's also been the largest protests that we've ever seen in regards to changing the date. The notion behind that idea is that the date needs to be changed because this date, 26th of January 1788, was the beginning of colonial Australia. It was where the flag was planted and essentially the country changed forever. I'm not gonna, I don't want to be a hypocrite in this situation because let's be honest, and I've got to be brutally honest here. Everything I'm doing right now, pretty much, is a product of this colonialism. What I'm doing now is I'm reaping the benefits of the invasion, and that's just the reality of it. I'm in love with the colonial Australia. And this is where I have a huge internal war going on because as much as I don't want to be a hypocrite, when I look at the situation at hand, I can't help but be a hypocrite because everything I'm enjoying in this country is a product of that date, is a product of, the colonialism that overtook the country and changed its face completely in 200 years. However, I also strongly believe that the date for Australia Day celebrations should be changed. And a lot of people seem to get very hot and heavy and hot and bothered by this suggestion that the date is changed. And it's always really baffled me why. It really confuses me why people get really worked up about us changing the date of Australia Day to another date. We've got 364 other days we could choose from within the year. Yet somehow we are stuck with January 26th, 1788. And some of the people's argument is that they don't want us to lose our history, or be ashamed of our history. But the problem is, none of this has anything to do with losing our history or our identity. The records will always be there. The date, January 26th, will always be there in our textbooks, in our history books. It will always be there on our statues and monuments all throughout the cities. We're not trying to erase history. We're not trying to destroy our history. I acknowledge that January 26th was an important date for Australia in terms of it changed the entire dynamic and landscape of the country for good and very bad. But at the same time, what we need to realize is that January 26th, 1788 was the beginning of some very atrocious actions that were conducted by, let's be honest, these colonial invaders. And thousands upon thousands of Aboriginals were killed or died of disease or had their children stolen. It's a very, very disturbing history, especially when you look at places like Tasmania, the island state down south. The Aboriginals were almost completely extinct and exterminated from that island. So it's a very disturbing history. I personally cannot celebrate a day where I know my fellow Australians see it as a day of suffering and see it as a day of torment. I cannot celebrate while I know my fellow Australians are hurting and they're upset about what is happening. So in my mind, I just say, hell, if the date is changed, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me at all. I lose nothing if the date is changed, but some of my other fellow Australians gain something from that. And I'm happy I'm happy for that sacrifice to be made because I'm not losing anything out of it. And as a matter of fact, every single other Australian out there will lose nothing if the date is changed. And that is why I don't understand that so many people are just absolutely hesitant to have the date changed. And they're completely insensitive to the feelings of our native Australians. Well, I'm sorry. You cannot say that these native Australians are minorities trying to change our history. Because these native Australians were never the minorities, they were the majorities. And they became a minority because of, the ancestors that were brought forth into this country during the colonial period. So you cannot say they're minorities trying to dictate to us how we should live our lives. No, no, no. They're the sole owners and custodians of this land. They're the original custodians of this land. No matter what we did, no matter what we do, that's just how it's going to be. I think about my fellow countrymen, and I think about, yes, our native Australians. Yes, I think about our so-called minorities. Why not? They are a part of this landscape just as much as you and I are. And us being the majority doesn't always mean that our ideas are right. Just because we're the majority doesn't mean everything we think is the correct way. Sometimes the majority is wrong. And that's what we need to look at, guys. And that's why I'm in complete support of changing the date. As I said, everything that I admire about the Australia today, and this is the truth, comes from the colonial invasion of this country, and I can't deny that. This conflict inside me, I've come to a reconciliation, and that reconciliation is saying, hey, I still acknowledge that date as the day that Australia, modern Australia, was founded, with some good and a lot of bad that came with that. But at the same time, I'm more than willing to put my hands up and say, hey, I'm willing to let this day go. Because it's recorded everywhere. It's not going anywhere. We're not changing history by changing the date. I'm willing to let this day go in order to make my fellow Australians happy. Because their happiness is my happiness. This is what we should be all about. We should be happy to see our fellow Australians happy. And if we know we're in a situation where we could change something and it doesn't affect us, but it will make other people gain, how could we reject that? If you are against changing the date for Australia Day, please educate me. Educate me on why you think, why you think that way, and why you think that changing the date is going to be destructive for us or divisive. Can you explain to me that? Because that's something I completely fail to understand. And I don't want to be that guy that cries racist against people. I don't know what people are thinking. I don't know their intentions. I don't know their education. But I just want to know how you've come to that conclusion. Because I've tried to look at it from that angle. I've tried to look at it and say, wait a minute, can changing the date really divide us further? Why should it divide us further? There's no reason for it to divide us further. Changing the date is not erasing history because that date is never going anywhere, right? But it is up to our collective consciousness as a country to say, hey, you know what? Changing the date won't impact me. We're still going to celebrate. We're just going to pick another day in the year to celebrate together. And it's a day that we know will make some of our fellow Australians happy. And their happiness should be our happiness because that is what our country is all about. I want all of us to celebrate this beautiful country. Yes, majority, minority, whoever, we're all a part of this landscape. And it's not a numbers game, guys. We're all a part of this. And if there's a day we could choose that, there is no conflict and everyone can freely enjoy the day and celebrate this country without feeling any remorse or, fear of the past, why not? Why not jump on board? That's what I want to know. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for watching. Cheers. Happy Australia Day to absolutely everybody out there. But as I said, today's not the day, I celebrate. So let's find a new one. Peace.